Welcome, everyone. Let's get started. Today, I am so delighted to introduce you to Gail Godreau. Gail is a career and employment coach at SMU's Department of Career and Experiential Learning. She is a professional coach, and she's also a SMU alumna. She has an MBA. And she's dedicated to helping emerging professionals like you leverage your education, your experience, and your skills to find meaningful work. And Gail uses a teaching approach to help students and recent graduates in conducting targeted job searches, in writing great resumes and cover letters, and preparing for interviews. And I can say that Gail certainly helped me prepare for my recent interviews, and they went very well. And she also helps folks learn how to network authentically and how to use LinkedIn to build long-term career connections. And she can also help you strategically research and prepare application documents for grad school in case that's your next step. And her goal isn't just to help you get a job, but also to create a career that supports the life you choose. And we talked about career life design, so that sounds right on point. Welcome, Gail. Can we get your slides shared with the class?
Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
How are you?
I am great.
First of all, I do just want to say I've caught myself recently using the term guys a lot. And I just want to be clear that when I say that, I mean it as a gender inclusive term. If that is not taken that way, please feel free to just put a note in the comments and I will, or in the chat, and I will use a different term. I feel folks is just a little bit outdated for me. So I do want to thank you, Tanya, for having me back and for sharing your experience too of working with me as in my capacity as a career and employment coach. It's always great to hear how people receive the services. So thank you so much for that. And there's nothing like firsthand commentary for people to know what we do. So just to let everybody know, we are talking about career today, and I know that you've had a module on career recently, week 8, I believe it was, and I've had the opportunity to observe that. So I'm hoping I can kind of incorporate a bit of that there, and you're definitely going to see some overlap as well, which was not intentional. So it just goes to show that Tanya and I are on the same page with a lot of this. So as Tanya mentioned, we are recording. There will be time at the, well, we hope there will be time at the end. That is our goal. And we can have Q&A at that point. So please make note of your questions. If there is a burning question you need addressed right away, then you are welcome to pop it in the chat and I'll do my best to monitor it. Or of course, Tanya is welcome to bring it to my attention as well. But if not, if it can hold till the end, that would be great. Okay, super. So without further ado, let's get started. And we're talking all about psychology students and grads in particular. And I do understand that we've got a good mix of students here. Some are further along in their career than others. And so maybe doing more of a mid-career kind of upgrading, I guess. So that being the case, some of my comments have been edited a little bit just to hopefully incorporate your experience as well. All right, so what can you do with your psychology degree? Isn't that the question? It's a big question. And certainly I've been working with so many psychology students recently, and this is kind of the question on their mind, although we've been talking mainly about grad school and how do I get from here to that, whatever it is I want to do with my degree. And I do know from Tanya's presentation or lecture from week 8 that, you know, there are certain things that people tend to think of, like clinical psychology or perhaps academia, but there are so many other things. But before we talk about what some options are, I have some questions for you. And the first is, what do you want to do with your degree? So, you know, that might be a little annoying. You might be like, just tell me what the options are. But really, and again, there was lots of content in the lecture about different theories of career and some of the building blocks, if you like. And I'm sorry, Tanya, I'm sure I don't have quite the same language, but like from the construction construction theory. So what do you actually want? So these are some questions for you to consider. And if you're someone who journals, might be a great opportunity to take some notes for yourself. And so the first is, why did you get into psychology? Why are you studying this field? Also, I do understand a number of you are, I believe, doing the HR certificate as well. So let's add that on. Why are you doing that combination? There's obviously something you're hoping it will lead to. And then somewhat connected is, what about it interested you? Was it, was it sort of the prestige of the career that it might lead to, or was it perhaps the income? Or was it the opportunity to maybe have your own practice? Was it helping people? And if so, that brings us actually to the next question, which is, how do you want to help people? Specifically, how? And which people? Who is it that you want to help? Because there are so many people in so many sort of groups, of course, with lots of intersectionality, but who is it that comes to mind when you say you want to help people, and what specifically is it you want to help them do? I'm seeing in the chat, there's been a problem. So I just want to make sure, is this coming through for you folks?
Yeah, I might have messed something up when I tried to project it for an in-person learner.
Oh, okay.
But is everything working? Can folks on Zoom see Gail's slides? Looks fine. Okay. At some point, it looked like I had a presenter view on.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I'm sorry for the interruption. Please continue. And
sure, no problem.
I think is following along your slides and is very welcome to come up to the podium with me as well. Okay. All right.
Awesome.
I'll let you carry on.
All right, thank you. No, it's important. We want to make sure that everybody is able to take this in, and we know that this is the world we live in now, is the hybrid world. So we want to make sure that everybody is included. So back to some of these questions. Again, who is it you want to help? And you can kind of slice and dice that any which way you want. So is it certain age groups or certain cultural groups, or people from maybe underserved populations? So who is it you want to help? And then what are your strengths or your superpowers? And again, I know this was covered in your lecture, so you've probably already started to give some thought to that. So it's awesome that, again, this is layering on top of what you've already had and what you've been considering. And, in the language of that lecture, superpowers, I think, are more specifically, what are your skills? In any case, what is it you're good at? What are the abilities or capabilities that you like to use and that you do well with? And again, what are the issues or challenges you care most about? So why I suggest we start with these questions is you kind of want to, in my opinion, build up from all of these things and then see what the options are, as opposed to, here are the options for that generic psychology grad, and which one do you like best? So it's really about starting from you, the individual, and working up and then finding options. So I hope that makes sense. So part of it is, what is it you're looking for in terms of your sort of employment situation? So there are many terms. And again, I know Tanya has shared, the difference between work and employment and career and job. And that's really Tanya's expertise, so I'll leave it there. But for my perspective, I'll say, is it a job? So something you go to, you get paid for, and you're not overly invested. Again, this is sort of my interpretation. Is it a career, which is something that kind of builds over time and has more of a, I guess, a longitudinal aspect to it? Or is it more of a calling or a vocation where you feel almost compelled to go in that direction? And ultimately, the question I would always start with is, what is your why? And I would take this at the sort of the macro level of, what is your big why? Again, why do you want to go into this field at all? What is it you're hoping to accomplish or contribute? But also at the smaller level, So for example, maybe right as soon as you graduate, your goal is more of a job. You want a job. And your why could simply be paying the bills. It could be saving up for grad school. It could be testing the waters to see if what you think you want to do is what you want to do. And then, so I'm sorry, I'm trying to think how I want to say this. Your why will change is what I'm thinking. Like sometimes a job is simply for those more practical reasons. Sometimes it is more grandiose. Maybe you have a sense of purpose or mission that you want to achieve, but it's important to know what your why is at every stage. So again, at certain points, you may simply want employment, and maybe when you graduate, the most important thing to you is practical experience with a mentor. So that will help direct your decisions. So always start with your why. I do kind of come from the business side into coaching. So this is a book by an author well known in the business community called Simon Sinek. And he has a book called Start With Why. And that was really pivotal for me as I was trying to find out my own why. So as you're going through your program and beyond, you really are kind of testing some keys to unlock your future. And it is important for you to know that the goal of your degree, whatever it is not necessarily the specific learning of facts, but it's training of the mind to think. So again, it's not the learning of facts as much as it is training the mind to think. So it's the process as opposed to the product, if you like. And that's Albert Einstein's quote. So Tanya and I felt it was important to share some ideas of what you can do with your psychology degree. And I say some because this is in no way, shape, or form an exhaustive list. But I've kind of structured it based on 3 particular categories. The first is what might be more obvious to you. So some might say, obviously, clinical psychologist would also make this list, but social worker, a mediator, obviously psychologist proper, neuroscientist, so something in the social sciences. And again, the things that are more obvious to you. And in the center column is more on the business side. And yes, psychology has a big place in business. Obviously, Tanya is an IO expert. That is business. So it is the marrying of psychology in the world of work. Obviously, doing psychology in HR, some of you are considering the business side as well. So here are some examples of roles that you might find yourself in using your psychology education. So anything in marketing, of course, where it is about understanding the consumer and the behavior and influencing that. Management generally, people generally are managing people. So obviously there's a need for psychological understanding or value of that there. You might simply just go out on your own and be a consultant or even an internal consultant. Perhaps with outplacement companies. So when organizations are restructuring and they have staff that need to be moved out, obviously things like law. So there are lots of sort of business areas in which you can go. And then again, knowing that some of you are doing the HR certificate as well, obviously you're considering human resources in some capacity. And we wanted to share 2 roles that we have on campus in the department that I'm part of. So career counselor is one. And those, really briefly, those are the people who help you figure out the bigger picture of what am I about? What are my strengths? What are my values? Broadly, what direction do I want to go in? You know, am I in the right program? So those big questions, and then the career and employment coaches, of which I am one, we help you kind of take it down to the next level and put in place an action plan and then act on that plan. So I am going to touch on this a little bit more later on, but I will tell you, when I was in school, my undergrad is in business. And then I also went on to do an MBA. When I was in my undergrad, right from first year on, I kept wanting to switch into something like social work or psychology or counseling or therapy, any of those things. And this notion of coach did not even exist at that point. Even far more recently than that, there was no such thing. So some of what you're going to find out is that new occupations will emerge and you might find your place in those. Okay. So your degree is so important. And as much as we love that you're doing psychology, and there's a huge need for people with your skills, and of course in HR as well, what's most important is having the degree at all. So, if there are any of you who are thinking, oh my goodness, I had a different degree and now I've moved over here, is that other degree of any use? Or perhaps you're thinking, I may want to do another one after this that makes no logical sense. Or perhaps you're even thinking you may want to switch programs. The thing that's most important for you to know is it's not as important what degree you have as the fact that you have one. Now, let me put a caveat on that. Obviously, if you're looking to go on into something like clinical psychology, it will matter what your undergrad is, and you're going to need additional education. But for some of those other roles I talked about, it's not as important which degree you have as it is that you have the degree. And that's because your degree really is more flexible and adaptable than you might know, and it is highly credible in and of itself. So really what that says is you do have options. So why is it more important that you have the degree than a specific one? Is because we're in what we call a skills-based economy. And in the past, even say like 15 years ago, we were still in what was called an experience-based economy. And what that meant was it was important that you have a specific degree and a specific job title in a specific organization. So you had to have the right one, whatever that was. And of course, by definition, there are only so many right ones to go around in any given market. But now, about 13 years ago, it switched into what's called a skills-based economy, where it's not so important what experience you have. So whether it was with a certain organization or whether the title really was, had the prestige that you needed to have, it's more important what skills and competencies you demonstrated. And again, I know this was part of the previous lecture, so we're building on that. So again, it's the skills and competencies that matter most. And along with that is the context in which you use those skills. So we will touch on that again a little bit later, but I just wanted to really underscore the fact that this is why, for example, you may hear from parents, older siblings that, oh, you've got to have the right whatever. And there's a lot of pressure attached to that. But really, it's more important that you get the skills, and you can get those in so many places. There is virtually no end to the options for that. And then, of course, it's a matter of articulating those in a way that employers will understand how it relates to them and their needs. So the other thing, of course, is those skills are transferable. So you may start out in one area and think, how on earth am I going to make the leap from this to that next opportunity? Know that many of the skills that you are building already and that you will continue to build are very, very transferable among roles and organizations and industries, sectors. So there is hope in all of that. And of course, adaptability is essential. The skills-based economy means that you are by definition more adaptable. Also, though, it means you need to be adaptable. Okay, so when we're communicating, for example, in an application for work, what is it that employers want to know? And I know, again, that this was touched on in the lecture, so it's a good refresher. So one thing I will say is employers do not always use the terms that I have here, the categories. So it's not, I don't provide them here so that you can say, oh, when the employer asks me about hard skills, this is what I'll tell them. It's so that you understand the different types of skills and the importance of them and how to communicate them to an employer. And those of you who are studying HR, I would love to hear if you're experiencing a lot of reference to this language. Oftentimes employers aren't using it, and sometimes they might even be misusing some of the terms. But I'm always open to hear what's going on currently. So hard skills. I think Tanya described it really, really well in that they are objectively measured or able to be objectively measured. The way I say it is you kind of have it or you don't. So you have a degree or you don't. You can program in a certain language or you can't, or speak a different language. Of course, your work experience is something that people will often think of when it comes to hard skills, experiences that they've had, and they will put those on their resume. What's important to know, though, is that other experiences like volunteer and community involvement, athletics, societies, all of those other things are also highly valuable. And there's a number of things you can put on your resume. These are some of the main ones, but we can certainly talk with any of you and would love to if there are certain things you're thinking, should this go on there at all? I don't know how to even put this on. So your hard skills, again, easily measured objectively. It's kind of a yes or a no. Of course, there can be levels of proficiency in there. So one of you maybe can speak a certain language, at a fluent level, and somebody else perhaps at a medium level, but still it's considered a hard skill. Then we come to soft skills. And this one, I always like to say, please do not be confused by the term soft skills. There is nothing soft or unimportant about these. In fact, these are absolutely essential. And I would love to know, I expect many of you are working. And if you're looking at this list of soft skills, I'm willing to bet that you're using those all the time and that they are required. In fact, I would love it if some of you want to pop in the chat. Is that your experience that you're finding, excuse me, that they are very, very important? Excuse me. Just keeping an eye on the chat there. I'm not seeing anything come in just yet. Oh, they are. Awesome. Thank you, Dana. So I would even challenge any of you who aren't certain to perhaps look for some job postings of the types of roles that you might want, whether it's when you graduate or sort of further into your career path, and look at the types of skills that are asked for over and over and over. And the list here, sorry, one moment. Excuse me. So the list here you are going to see repeated on virtually every single job posting that you're interested in. So please do not underestimate the importance of them. These are by definition more subjective in terms of how an employer might sort of describe them. So what does communication mean to one employer versus another? What is teamwork? What is leadership? One that's not on here, but often is seen as working in a dynamic or fast-paced environment. And of course, different employers will mean different things with that as well. When I worked in advertising, I learned what fast was. So they are subjective in terms of the employer, but they're also subjective in terms of the employee. So what I mean by that is when I'm working with students, they'll say, for example, I have strong communication skills. Let's say written communication as an example. What does that mean? So of course, I'm going to ask for some context. So where have you shown that? And one of the reasons we do this, by the way, is because we all live and think in stories. We need stories in order to kind of conceptualize what someone is saying to us. So when somebody tells me that they have strong written communication skills, if you're like me Oh, thank you, Jen. Absolutely. It is important, especially in customer service and dealing with people. Absolutely. And we're always dealing with people in one way or another. So communication. One person's written communication is going to be entirely different than another's. So for example, again, when I can help you articulate a context, then I get a picture in my mind of you doing that. That means as well that an employer will get that picture. And then they can kind of attach that skill to you, if that makes sense. And they'll also understand, well, what do you mean by communication? So for example, written communication, it could mean I write really, really good emails. And yes, that is a skill. Somebody else, it could be I write creative copy for blogs. Very different, again, than a more sort of factual business-like email. And then somebody else, it could be I write extensive term papers or research reports. So I hope you're seeing that there's a very, very significant difference in those three examples or contexts of written communication. And once I say those things to you, I hope you're able to create that picture in your mind. And the thing that is really valuable with that as well is that I also, when you tell me about your written communication, I'm also attaching other skills and abilities to that. So if you tell me you write extensive reports, I see a really, really competent writer, of course, but somebody who maybe can manage larger projects. So there are just so many other skills and qualities that are linked with that. The third thing that employers are really looking for, and again, I know Tanya talked about this, is how you will fit within the organization. So what is your character or your personality? So when we say fit, I always like to underscore, we don't mean you have to be the same as everyone else. And in fact, a lot of organizations are really seeming to come on board with not just being open to, but really embracing diversity on many, many levels, you know, of whether it be culture or sexual orientation or gender identity or religion or diverse abilities. So we're not saying you have to be the same, but we are saying that there has to be an alignment. And in particular, do you align with the values of the organization? And I do know that values was part of your earlier presentation. So fit will matter. And that is something else that you need to be communicating when talking with an employer, whether it's in written documents like cover letters and resumes, or of course, in interviews as well. In networking as well, like in all the different contexts in which you're interacting with a potential employer and grad school, by the way, there's an element of all of these skills and fit that the reader is looking for. Okay, any questions? Again, I'm just flipping over to the chat to see if anything's coming up. I will say too, soft skills can often be quite innate, as in it's something that you are naturally good at oftentimes. So if you are a person who has really good interpersonal skills, chances are that that's just kind of how you are as a person, not that you have gone and studied to have good interpersonal skills. Okay. All right. So we did just cover some hard skills and soft skills. And of course, the question might be, well, what do I need? How do I know what skills employers care about? You know, I could work on so many things. What's important? Where do I need to focus? So this is according to the, and I've just forgotten what NACE stands for, National Association of Colleges and Employers, the top 8 core competencies of career readiness. So, you know, being ready to officially launch your career. These are things that are needed, statistically speaking, but it's actually a little bit more than this now. So this is in your handout. I hope you're able to read it. If not, feel free to reach out and I can certainly send you one. But I'm just going to hit the highlights for you in terms of what these core competencies are. So the first is critical thinking or problem solving. So really, that's the ability, as you can imagine, to use reasoning and judgment to interpret information and facts and data and to come up with a conclusion. So problem solving, it is useful in so many contexts, okay? The next is professionalism or work ethic, and that's really about, do you demonstrate integrity and ethical behavior and act responsibly in the interests of the larger community that you're part of? And also, do you learn from your mistakes? Do you own them? Do you, make changes going forward? So it's kind of how you approach your work, the professionalism or work ethic. Next is communication. As I just mentioned, you'll notice we have both oral and written communication here, and that is because both are extremely important. And I challenge you to find any organization, or let me say this, I challenge you to find 3 job postings that do not require both. So always, even if a role is mostly verbal or oral, or another one is mostly written, it's going to require both. And it's about, can you clearly articulate your thoughts and ideas in a way that conveys meaning to others, whether they're within your organization or outside of the organization? So again, super important. Digital technology. This one is, as you might imagine, it's using technology to accomplish a given task. It's also knowing which technology to use. It's actually, this one's been upgraded since COVID to digital fluency. And again, probably no surprise to you that we really need to be able to move between technologies quite fluidly. And again, Tanya and I did practice for today, but yet sometimes things happen. And even that is an example. Can you troubleshoot in the moment? So being able to move among technologies, pick things up, learn new technologies and apply them is all part of digital fluency. Leadership, I'm sure you have a general sense of that, but it's really about leveraging the strengths and abilities of others in the service of a common goal, and using your interpersonal skills to coach and develop them or train and mentor. Teamwork, also collaboration is sometimes how they reference it. And these are interchangeable terms. So you will see some version of these on different job postings. So for this one, of course, it's building collaborative relationships with colleagues and customers and vendors or whoever, and being able to work within a team structure. What's interesting about this is that it's almost always paired with the ability to work independently as well. So not one or the other, but both. Global or intercultural fluency, as you also probably can guess, this one has become even more important since COVID. So this one is really about being open and inclusive and sensitive when interacting with people from different backgrounds, again, of various sorts. And it's even more so since COVID, it's important that we are able to work very effectively with people from all perspectives and backgrounds. And as my colleague put it really, really well, since COVID, it's like the world is smaller and bigger at the same time. So we can be working with people anywhere across the world. In fact, I have no idea. Those of you who are logged in remotely, you could be anywhere in the world for all I know right now. And we've certainly worked with students across the globe. So it's the same thing in the workplace. You need to be able to work with people in a variety of diverse groups. Okay, so it's not just being willing, it's being actively open and inclusive. And also employers are paying more attention to this now and seeming to be more sincere with wanting that diversity of thought and perspective and experience. So the last one is career management. And this one I think is super important. It's one I wish I had known about when I was in school, because when I went through, it was, the sort of prevailing wisdom was get your education, keep your head down, work hard, and it will be recognized. You'll get promoted at the appropriate time and all of that. So again, I'm peeking at the chat. Anybody else have that kind of experience? And I was just presenting to several chemistry classes last week, and it appears that still is what a lot of people are experiencing and hearing. So yeah, anybody else kind of been given that message, or to use Tanya's language, that myth even? Okay. We are a quiet group. Yes. Okay, Dana. I'm so glad you're here. Awesome. It's not awesome that we get that message, but career management is really about being in charge of your own career experience. So it is identifying and articulating your skills and owning those, your strengths, your knowledge, your abilities and experience. So you cannot leave it to someone else to kind of excavate that for you. You need to be able to articulate it. You need to be keeping an eye out for maybe what things are changing, what are new skills that are being required. And if you don't have them and you want to go in that direction, then you really have to take charge of getting those skills. It doesn't mean an employer won't support you in it, but you have to take the initiative in almost every case. And it's also about you identifying where you want to go next. So not waiting for someone to tap you on the shoulder and saying, hey, I have this promotion. I think you'd be great for it. Or this other organization has an amazing opportunity. You should apply. That's not likely to happen. So it really is up to you to manage your own career. I think of it as steering your own ship. You're in charge. And then since COVID, we've actually had two new competencies emerge as extremely important. The first one is the ability to learn, or learning to learn is another way it's said. This one, I cannot underscore enough how important it is with employers nowadays. And that is, we need to learn new things, unlearn old things, relearn things, learn it in a different way, and just always, always learning. And again, COVID has taught us sort of firsthand through things like picking up new technologies that if you didn't know how to use Teams or Zoom before, you got to know it now, right? So learning to learn is extremely important. And I would encourage you to really pay attention to that one. And kind of attached to that is the ability to work remotely. So of course, that may include technology, as we just talked about, but also think about some of the other skills or abilities that you're demonstrating when working remotely, such as independence. Many as a time, I wish I had a tech support person in my home office. I don't. So I got to figure it out. But it's also being self-managed, right? You create your schedule, you work your schedule. Nobody's going to say, hey, did you get that done? So working remotely has a lot of sort of underlying skills and abilities attached to it. Okay, so this one's really important. I do encourage you to keep this in mind as you are working on your own resume, but also as you're building experience. And I know Tanya had said in their lecture about career and when career is, and I completely agree. Career is now. It's not that thing you do when you graduate. I kind of think of that as big C career, the big career job, but you're in your career now and you're building skills now. So now that you know what some of the top skills are that employers are looking for, and yes, grad schools as well, if you choose to go that route, first of all, assess yourself and decide, do I have these? Are there any gaps I should be filling? And look for opportunities. So for example, if you have a group project coming up, maybe instead of doing the analytical part that you always seem to gravitate towards because you're good at it, pick something else. So maybe you offer to write the report or to do the presentation. So look for opportunities in the work you're already doing to add some of these skills on. And then I'd encourage you to make note of them. Start to kind of develop an inventory of these skills that you have, including context. Because again, that's how an employer or again, a grad school will understand, what do you mean by teamwork, for example? Okay, so you are the superhero of your own story, and your skills are your superpowers. And again, because we're in the skills-based economy, you can all have superpowers. It's not reliant on a specific position in a certain organization in somebody's favor. So really take hold of these and nurture them and be ready to articulate them. And of course, we can help with that. And I do love this quote by Mark Franklin, which is, your career is the full expression of who you are and how you want to be in the world. Notice I didn't say it's the litany of roles that you've had. It's the full expression of who you are and how you want to be in the world. And it expands as it naturally goes through cycles of stability and change. Probably more change than stability lately. And we know the only constant is change, right? So again, that's why learning to learn is so important. So this is important for you to understand that it's natural for your career to have ebbs and flows. And as my colleague calls it, squiggly. So I often have a slide that identifies or shows kind of how it can go all over the place. If you've ever been to Cape Breton, it's like driving in the Highlands. It's switchbacks and, going lateral for a while, up and down hills. So it's all normal. So highlighted skills. I want to encourage you and invite you now to give some thought to what are some skills that you already have. And yes, you all have skills. You cannot get to this point without some. I've given you a head start by talking about different skills already. So what I'm going to do is ask for the group of you to start throwing out some skills, and you're welcome to unmute if you prefer. Again, the recording is on, so if you do speak, that will be in the recording. Or you can pop it in the chat. And let's see if we can get to 10 without duplication. And this is going to be rapid fire because I'm talking too much tonight. So can we get to 10? So what's a skill that somebody already has? Oh, we're not going to get there fast. We're going to have to stay overnight. Okay, communication. Awesome. Group work. Yes. Admin. Cool. So yeah, there are definitely a lot of skills connected with that. What else you guys got? You can go twice. I know we're not a huge group, so I will let people go twice. Multitasking, absolutely. Cooking. Yeah.
What did you learn about cooking? A lot of me working out. Yeah, but it wasn't related. Oh, developed as a student, but help me understand how, because as a student you had to learn to cook differently. And like, can you give me an example? Like, I'm curious. Like, you have like home cooked meals and you would cook. Like my parents would feed me, I would maybe like get it. I'm gonna repeat that. Can you guys hear Dana?
Not well.
Yeah, no, well, it's because the microphone is at the lectern, but Dana was explaining how, as an international student coming to Canada, she had to learn to cook, how to cook herself. That she used to have home cooked meals.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your favorite thing to cook?
Barbecue ribs.
Barbecue ribs. Yeah. That's I like that answer. Still, it is in the context of being a student, but it wasn't. I was thinking in a little box. So good for thinking outside the box. How many did you get to?
We've only got 5, Tanya.
All right, we need another 5.
We got another. Time management. We've got great. 4 more. No duplicates.
I might throw one. I'm thinking on like what I learned from doing this, but there were times I just had to find my courage and show up and keep going. And
yeah.
And just,
love it. So sort of resilience, hey?
Or adaptability. I wonder.
Yeah.
It was like I can't be. There was a time when, like, an hour before lecture, the cloud, I don't know if it crashed or whatever, it ate my work. I'm like, oh my goodness, the show must go on. I have to wing it, and it wasn't what I hoped for that lecture, but we all got through it, and the test scores were good. So what do you call that? Just getting on with it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not coming up with a different term, but absolutely.
It might have
it's
been
just,
distress tolerance.
yeah.
I'll put down just because I had to just keep going despite it. And there's times that I lectured on stuff that was like emotionally really upsetting for me. And I could hear my voice breaking when I was speaking, but I just had to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So perseverance. Yeah. Distress. So we had 6, and then I saw problem solving, perseverance, distress. One more.
I think we got them. Well, maybe not. We've got listening in there as well. Yeah, one more, folks. We're
Great.
almost there.
Yeah.
Oh, analytical. Yes, we got it. Good job. Again, I know you're not a huge group, so it was pulling on you a bit more than might be normal, but that's exactly it. And I'm willing to bet if you were to look through that list yourselves, probably every single one of them would apply to you as well. So this is where you can cheat off your classmates. So if it's a skill you have, then note it. And I'd encourage you to start taking note of the skills you have, and even more so, including context. And I mean this literally, like start maybe a spreadsheet or a table, and it's like, okay, these are some skills I know I already have. Where have I used this? Where have I showed problem solving? And note some context so that you can remember later on. And then, for example, if you wanted to work on a resume or a cover letter, you've already got a lot of this work done for yourself. And then I'd encourage you to consider that a living document and keep adding to it. So again, maybe in your work, whether it's a part-time job or full-time or whatever, or volunteer, maybe you take on a different role or an added responsibility. Start to make note of these things because they're all part of your superpowers. And those who can articulate them best are often going to stand out. So great job on that. Thank you for your participation. So why do we need context? Is because many of you are going to have those same skills. I just said probably all of you would have some version of the ones that were just listed. It's going to be important to know how you demonstrated it or used it as opposed to somebody else. So for example, serving food in a restaurant is a very common job for students. And one person may do it with great efficiency, just really, really quick. They clear the tables well, they've got new people in already. Somebody else might do it with the most amazing customer service, and they remember people's orders, and they do menu recommendations. So same job, but they do it differently. So think about how you show your skills, not just what ones you have. And then that's part of how you can stand out. I'm not going to spend much time here on the right side of the slide, but these are some examples of skills and qualities, I guess, yeah, skills and qualities here that many of you are building simply by being an international student. So Dana, yes, absolutely. Besides cooking, which is important, maybe laundry was on that list too, but there are so many things that you are adding to your skill set simply by being. So it's good to kind of pull that apart and notice what you've been building. So a couple of examples here of skills. So I'll let you just take a second and read these. Okay, any comments on these? I've given you 2 examples because they're very different, and one is obviously a hard skill, one is soft skills. But any thoughts on these that you want to share?
I'll jump in now. I didn't want to cut in front of a student, but I waited my 2 Mississippis. I'm really interested in this. So in IO psychology, a skill is more than an ability. It's a learned proficiency, and I can see how. So yeah, being proficient in Microsoft Office or Google Suite, that's a proficiency, and you should be able to demonstrate it here, there, and the other place. And even somebody who doesn't like you has to agree that you can use Excel. So yeah, I see that as a hard skill. And then for teamwork, I'd say like participated in many group projects. Well, I don't know how how skilled you wear. But it's sort of interesting to know that the person has participated in them. Maybe they were the teammate that got a 0. But then, yeah, working with others from diverse backgrounds tells me something like that. Learned proficiency that I could use, and it might appeal to an employer with a certain values, an employer that values diversity in the employee body.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. That first part tells me almost nothing, and yet that is what we will see sometimes in people's applications or in their resumes. You know, group work. They might not even say where. So the first part of the context is, you know, was that at McDonald's? Was it, you know, part of Confucius Society? Was it in a university group project? Was it in retail? So a little bit of context, and then, yeah, adding some more about, well, what does that look like? What was your participation like? So it was that working with people from different backgrounds and specifically communicating and collaborating. And then there's a positive result coming as well, which we're going to talk about shortly. And that is, in this case, delivering a collective goal within firm deadlines. So I hope that you all are seeing, when you kind of parse this out and take it apart, you can see so much is built into that supposedly one skill of teamwork. You can learn so much about the person. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm aware that some, feedback that programs get from employers is that the graduates aren't good at teamwork, and yet there's all these group projects. And something that has occurred to me is that there's kind of a bit of a blame the student attitude, but then it's easy for an instructor to put people in teams, because it means, like, instead of having 100 papers to read, if everyone's in a group of 5, well, you have 20 pages to grade. So it's kind of I don't know, there's a bit in the interest of the instructor to do that. But if we're saying that it's to develop team skills, then, what kind of support does the instructor have to give to those students in the groups to know that they're working well, and that if things go sideways, you can get things back on track? So I feel like we have a collective responsibility in helping students develop that skill.
I love that. And also, kind of, again, what does teamwork mean? What are the sub skills or the things that you can be demonstrating that actually shows or contributes to teamwork? I agree with you. And participating, like literally just being there, is not demonstrating the skill. So I agree. And also, kind of, how are we measuring it? I guess I say we, I'm not faculty, but how is it being measured? So if there are 4 people in a group, are all 4 actively contributing, or is somebody riding along on the other people's work? So it's a really good point. I've certainly experienced both.
Yeah,
we know what that's like. But yeah, really good point. It is in the student's best interest to be doing these things. And that's why I use that example of switch it up, not because you want to make it harder for yourself, but because if you always do the number crunching, then why not pick up something else? Maybe you create the schedule and you show organization and time management instead, or leadership in some capacity, so that you then have those skills to put on your resume as well as doing the assignment. Okay. My screen is frozen. 1 second. Does that every so often. There we go. Okay. So when we think about the skills that you have and the strengths and the competencies that you've been developing and demonstrating, again, we want you to think broadly. So not just through what people often think of, which is paid work or perhaps internships. Also think about your academics. That's why we mentioned group projects just a minute ago, because your classes and your workshops and the labs and all of that, they are all really, really great places to develop skills and also to test yourself and kind of build these in a safe environment. And I do say, being in university itself is like a lab where you can try yourself out. Like maybe you want to do a presentation long before you're in an employment situation where you have to do that. Also, any campus or community involvement that you're part of, remember those things all matter. And of course, life experiences. So one thing I do want to say here is that a lot of students, I mean, we have an amazing international student body. So some places, it is not customary or even allowed that students work during high school. So it's important for you to realize you have skills from other contexts, because they'll often say, I don't have any skills, or I don't have any experience. What they mean is I don't have any paid experience. So let's look at the other aspects of your life and what skills you do have. So this I'm going to introduce to you briefly. If you do choose to work with us on your resume, cover letter, and preparing for interviews, you're going to see this again. It is a really, really powerful tool. We call these SAR statements or SAR stories, also known as accomplishment statements. So this is how you can represent your experience on a resume, for example, or in an interview. And thank you to Tanya for challenging me a little bit to make this a bit clearer, and also fixing an error that we had in this this document. So essentially, I want to invite you to think about what you have done in a role in more detail. So oftentimes when someone is telling us about experience they have, they will just basically start with the beginning, like instructed a residence floor tutoring program. And that's okay, right? At least it's starting with a strong verb, which we highly recommend. But when we add a little bit more about how you did it, so maybe what are some steps you took or the skills and qualities you drew on, look what happens. So now it's through conducting bi-weekly study groups. And when you add that piece, again, I can infer so much more about you. I know that you're reliable because you showed up every second week. I know that you can communicate effectively to groups, not just individuals. I know that you're committed. Like, this is an ongoing program. And I think it also takes better skill to do it on a repetitive basis rather than a one-off. And then when we add the third part, which is the result or positive outcome, it's even better. I still have an error here though, but it is the result is to increase student overall GPA from 2.9 to 3.3. Anybody want to just jump in and say, why is it important, or what value does that last part add? I am watching, waiting. Okay. All right, I'm going to jump in just in the spirit of time. And so why we think that latter part is such a valuable addition is because now I know not only did you do it, not only did you do it over a period of time with groups, but now I know you were good at it. You had a significant impact on that student group. So I know that you're a really good communicator. Perhaps a good trainer. You probably have excellent interpersonal skills. So when you put your experience in these kinds of what we call experiential stories, you communicate so much more than even what you say here. So I hope you can see the weight of this, the impact of it, because this is what will set you apart. And we've had employers who have received resumes from some of our students, and they'll send them back to us and say, we know they're from SMU. They haven't been through your system or your process or your services. Please help them redo this and then send them back. So this can be what sets you apart. So again, first look at this, you will see it again. So here's an example, just so you can really see it in living color. And so the green portions in the after are the situation or the what you did. The blue is the action or how you did it. And then the red is the outcome or result. Any thoughts on this one? First question is really easy. Do you agree that it is so much more nourishing or rich than just worked as part of a team? to Tanya's point earlier, participated in a group. What does that even mean? And what kind of a group was this? Was it a big group or a little group? Well, this one happened to be 4. It was in multiple projects, not just one. It was in academia specifically. Then some of the how is meeting and communicating on a weekly basis, reviewing work in progress, and then the outcome. This is kind of the icing on the cake. So again, ensured completion of collective projects on time. It helps the employer know what is something you even care about. You care about getting it done on time. Oh, that's good. Someone else might say, staying friends with everybody in the group. It's an outcome. Right. So when you are preparing to talk to an employer or a recruiter, or you're just networking maybe at an event on campus, you want to give thought to what is your brand? Sort of as an emerging professional, what is it that you would want people to say about you when you're not there? Are you a person who's extremely articulate or conscientious? Are you an expert analyzer? Are you a whiz with Excel? So kind of what is it that you want people to say about you? And we encourage you to think about what's called an elevator pitch. Some would call it an introductory statement. This is something that you need to kind of finesse and be able to say to a potential employer or network contact in the time it takes to do a short elevator ride. So literally a few floors. So it's got to be concise, succinct, have the key information in it. So it is something that you want to think about and practice. And it's not to tell your whole story. The goal is simply to get their curiosity piqued and have them want to have further conversation. So ideally, you get out of the elevator and they say, wow, it's been great meeting you. I'd love to set up a time to have a coffee chat. What's your week looking like? Okay, so it's to pique their curiosity for further conversation. So in order to do that, there are certain things that you do want to consider. And again, this is in your handout, so please don't be overwhelmed with all the text here. But it's essentially the who, what, when, where, why, and which of you. So who are you? So some things you could consider are your values. What are your dreams or goals, or what is it you hope to contribute, or the impact you want to have? Why are you interested in that particular area of study? Why did you choose psychology? Why did you add HR on top of it? How do you want to make the difference you want to make? So maybe you want to do it through motivational speaking. Maybe you want to do it through analyzing big data. Maybe you want to do it through cleaning up streams. So how is it you want to make the difference? And what are the skills that you want to use to do that? What is your preferred work environment and company culture? So again, some people absolutely do not want to be, as they would say, tied to a desk. They want flexibility of space and time. Some people love the routine of being in a set space at a set time all the time. So what's that environment for you? Where do you want to do the work? Do you want to be in Northern Canada? Do you want to be in Maui? Doesn't that sound nice? And again, in an office, in the field somewhere, working from home, what is that environment that you see yourself working in? And then who or which are the people that you want to attract into your life, and who do you have to be to connect with them? So I love the point Tanya made in the earlier presentation about, I think it was values versus virtues. So values being kind of what you care about, and virtues being the consistent application or demonstration of that. I hope I've paraphrased that reasonably well, Tanya. So who do you want to be? And kind of who are the people you want to attract into your circle? Because we are, some say we're the sum of the people we hang around with most. So there is, again, in your handout, a little bit of a structured introductory statement that you can use to begin to formulate this for yourself. And so all of these sentence openers are just to help you frame the main information. What I will say is it's going to evolve over time. Do not think, oh, I have to get it right and therefore it lives on, forever. It's something that will evolve over time. You'll get a better sense of yourself and the things that you want to do and the kind of world or work world you want to be in. And you also want to be able to say it in more than one way. So let's say you see Tanya and I at a networking event, and you've just introduced yourself to Tanya with all of this, and then I walk up to the two of you and you introduce yourself to me. You want to be able to kind of reorganize this a little bit so it's very conversational and not like a script. So that is a good little structure you can fill in for yourself. So this is my mantra, one of my mantras. Life is not linear. And I would love to see your faces. I hope that some of you will be nodding your head, especially those of you who have been in the work world for a little bit and you thought you were going to do a certain thing and, oh, that's not what you're doing. And you thought you could go from point A to point B, but you realize now that there are a whole bunch of other steps in the middle and you don't even know where point B is. So if any of you are golfers, you'll know that this is it's a hole on a golf course, and the bend in it is called a dog leg. And this has been kind of like my career journey. I had no idea where I was headed when I started out. I knew I wanted to help people. As I told you, even early in university, I really wanted to do social work or psychology or something in that area, but I didn't. But with each step that you take in your career, you're going to get more clarity, hopefully. And as you get further along, then you can actually see the goal. So I could not see, in using the golf analogy, I couldn't see the pin when I started out. I just had to hit the ball forward, catch up to it, hit it again. And after a while, I can see where I'm headed. So again, career and employment coach didn't even exist to my knowledge when I was in school. And it was only through a lot of self-exploration and looking at what's out there that I realized this sounds like what I want to be doing. Coaching specifically. When I landed there, I was like, yes, this is a good fit. So I guess the message there is you can't know it all yet. It's like starting out on a drive in a car. You've got to just get out of the garage and make your best guess as to where you're going, and then be ready to pivot or adjust your route as you go. So again, career management is going to come into play very much here. So I mentioned earlier, you have options, and this is meant to be overwhelming on purpose. It's also meant to give hope, because even earlier, we had approximately 10 or so options on the earlier slide of things you could do with your psychology degree. There are so many things. So once you have a better sense of yourself, and then layer that with looking at what opportunities there are and what education is required, as Tanya talked about in the earlier lecture, then there are so many options open for you. And this is yet more. So again, I hope that gives you a sense of ease and hope to know that, wow, I could really take this degree and apply it in so many ways. So along the lines of career management, there's this term of being a careerpreneur. So taking an entrepreneurial approach to your career and, looking for opportunities, getting the resources that you need, which might be skills, could be people that you need to align yourself with, filling a need or a gap, and again, always being ready to do lifelong learning, and entrepreneurs are always learning and adjusting. So really quickly, I just want to share with you about our group at Career and Experiential Learning. I want to let you know that there is a team of people there not waiting, we've got lots going on, but we are there to serve you, to help you in anything related to career. So we've got two sides in Career and Experiential Learning. This is the career team. So I mentioned to you earlier about career counselors, and they help you with that big picture, including what major should I take? Obviously, you guys have figured that one out, at least up to this point. Then the career and employment coaches, such as myself, there is a lot of sub-services here, and I really want you to know that they're all there. So whether it is written applications, so resume and cover letter is often how we first meet students. It could be actually finding a job. You don't have to figure that out. Anything to do with interviews, preparing for them, doing mock interviews, networking, LinkedIn, which you're in 4th year at this point, that really is something you should be considering, in my opinion. And again, for some of you who choose to go into grad school, we'll be talking because that is a very popular conversation right now. We have employer engagement team members as well who are actively working with employers to host events for you and connect you with them. And just hitting the highlights here, Student Employment Initiative is a program for students who identify as having a disability of some sort. So if that happens to be you or someone you know, please do reach out. We have services to help those students as well, make sure they have career relevant training and opportunities. And then on the experiential learning team, we have cooperative education. Again, knowing that you're 4th year, I'm not going to spend time on that one, but if you know somebody in 1st or 2nd year, they may want to look into this. It's an amazing opportunity to get paid relevant work experience. Co-curricular record is about capturing extracurricular activities and the competencies you're building. And then service learning is for courses that have a community-based project embedded in them for academic credit. So all that to say, we invite you to reach out as early as you like. It could be tomorrow, it could be in a month, and as often as you like throughout your program. Again, I know you're further along. It's probably going to be even more important for you to start making connections with us. Do check out the events and workshops on Career 360. And anytime you have questions, we're not scary people. If you remember only one email, it's this one here, cel@smu.ca. The sort of official way to reach us is through our career platform called Career 360. And this is just what it looks like when you first go in. And you can log in with your S number and password and start poking around in the menu options there and see what all is here for you. The last thing I want to say is, this is a really, really important thing for you guys to know, and that is our services on the career side are available to you up to 3 years after you graduate. So for those of you who might be thinking, oh no, I wish I knew this earlier, which is what we hear often, we're here for you up to 3 years after you graduate. So maybe you've got it figured out now, and then in 2 years you want to do it something different, or you're applying for a promotion. We are still here. And with that, I know we are at the window. I'm happy to stay for a little longer if anyone has questions. Tanya, I don't want to keep you though. So the other invitation is please do reach out. And if you have questions, we are happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Gail. I enjoyed that so much. Really appreciate it.